You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this. I almost messed that part up. We're your hosts for this show. And we're actually reviewing episodes 3 and 4 of Maul Shadowlord, even though we are well aware that episodes 5 and 6 have been out for 4 days or something now.
Right.
So, I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't go on last Sunday. Then Monday became a problem. So then we're like, well, we got to go on at some point before because, we don't want to. Because the problem is, if we tried to double up, like back when we were just reviewing one episode at a time, because they would drop one episode at a time, it was a little easier.
A lot easier.
Yeah, because, I mean, you miss a week or whatever, fine, you just double up. But now we would be reviewing like 4 episodes if we did that. 4 episodes, yeah. Yeah, can't do that. So we are glad that you're with us, of course, Ted. Glad you're here. I'm assuming you're still here. I know a lot of times if we don't come on right away or whatever, Ted's like, gone to bed. I'll catch you guys on the replay. But hey, whoever's watching live, we're here. Whoever's watching the rebroadcast, well, we're here. So we're going to be reviewing episodes 3 and 4 of this show. And again, it came out to a very strong start with episodes 1 and 2. And I think it's continuing that momentum, honestly. I mean, I think that we're getting a little bit more deep. Ted says he's awake still. Good deal.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a little bit deeper into the lore now. We're starting to see some of the motivations. We're seeing a little bit of Maul's plan. We're getting a little bit deeper into the family dynamic. So yeah, I mean, I think that so far, things are actually moving pretty well with this show.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some reveals as far as about the Jedi still being around, and I love the fact that Maul has this kind of a calm way of like seducing his targets almost in a way. He really gets into the mind of the characters, and I mean, I really just enjoy it. But yeah, he's definitely on the warpath to get anybody who's ever betrayed him. That's kind of his deal, and then he's turning people against each other. He's been really vicious, especially what he did to the Pikes. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I think is worth mentioning here too is this is very much, I had pointed out on the last review, that this is a lot like the Vader motivation in the Vader comic series.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which one, because they have like the whole Vader, like sometimes they'll do like where they'll have a specific title for it. And again, I mean, I don't really have time to keep up with the comics anymore, so I basically lost complete track of all that. But there was a period of time where I was reading them, and I mean, I honestly wish I could go back. Now, I know that at the end of a series, they'll basically release it as like one graphic novel, and I've been tempted to do that because, I mean, there's some really great storytelling, a lot of really cool lore in it, but this is very much like that, where Vader at that time was trying to hunt down or whatever everybody that basically didn't tell him about Luke Skywalker, right? That his son was alive and all this, and he was a little on the warpath. So that reminded me of that. And then on the Maul side of things, this is very much, and this is another thing that you and I pointed out last week, this is very much in the same vein of how he basically dealt with Ezra. As far as like trying to get into his head. And he's doing the same thing with Devon, right? That's her name?
Yep, yeah. Devon. Yep.
So I think that it's a very interesting way that he is dealing with people. And again, this is something that you would not have necessarily seen just based on seeing him theatrically in The Phantom Menace. This is a character development that happened, I think it probably started in the Clone Wars. And then obviously went on to Rebels, and now we have Maul Shadowlord. So I think that there's a definite extension. guess that's the word, of his character that was established starting in, say, the Clone Wars, but then we're also getting a lot more. And I think that that's something that was a challenge for this series was he's been featured so much in all these other shows that it's like, okay, you're going to basically give him his own show, but I mean, what are we going to get that's new other than maybe a new adventure? And that's something that surprised me, is that we're seeing, more uh I guess revelations of his personality.
Yeah, I mean, we know with the um this you were speaking of comic book series, I was thinking about the whole Kira and Crimson Dawn thing and
Yeah.
um or the bounty hunters type stuff and
Mhm.
just um that whole moment in time in Star Wars where that you had a lot of stuff going on and he was kind of still in the background. He was still doing a whole lot of moving around and things back then. So um it's there's a whole lot of depth and there's a whole lot of things that you could bring out that a lot of times that we don't really think about because we kind of see Maul as kind of this one-dimensional kind of a character in a way, but he's really very uh multi-dimensional and he has a different type of motivation now because he's no longer a Sith Lord, he's his own man. So now he's kind of doing his own thing and that creates the adventure.
Yeah, and I also think that a couple of things that are really important to point out here, and you get a lot of different motivations on his part, but you also get a lot of character depth when it comes to the surrounding characters, the world building that they're doing. Again, they're showing us a different facet of what life under the Empire is like during this time period. Because, I mean, let's face it, this is a time period that has now been, let's just say, well lived in by a lot of projects, right? Between episodes 3 and 4 seems to be the favorite target of a lot of Lucasfilm projects with good reason. I mean, don't get me wrong, that is not a criticism. That is something that we have always wanted to see. And I like the fact that they've started to go a little bit earlier, like starting with the Bad Batch and things like that, to where, or even the Andor series, where, because to me, once you get closer to episode 4, the Empire's been established. I mean, we kind of get it, right? But I mean, when you're looking at it from the standpoint of, like, last night, it was the Republic, and this morning, it's the Empire, and how people are dealing with that transition because at first they don't really notice it. And I thought the Bad Batch did a particularly good job of showcasing this to where, and Andor did too, by the way. That was another big thing about Andor is that they actually showed us the average citizen during this time really didn't notice the difference, right? They believed all of Palpatine's propaganda. They believed a lot of this stuff. And they're like, yeah, I mean, they're still kind of okay, sure, they had a little bit of a name change, but it's still basically the same. But it wasn't until, you actually see a lot of this behind the scenes stuff where you're seeing all these atrocities being. And I think it's particularly interesting that they are showing yet more underworld side. You're getting a little bit of the normal citizenry in this, but I mean, there's a lot that's dealing with more of the criminal underworld aspect of how that's happening, not just under the Empire, under the beginnings of the Empire. And I know that
Yeah,
this does take place when I don't know why I can't keep this in my head. When does this take place? I know it's before like Rebels, I think. Well, obviously,
yeah.
but
So this
I
is before Rebels. This is after.
probably after Solo.
Yes. So it's kind of in that wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was like I thought, and if anybody knows in the chats, you can let me or let us know. Because, I mean, I thought they gave an exact uh, amount of years, like, you know how they always do that before the Battle of Yavin thing,
Yavin, yeah.
which is, I don't know.
It's like AD versus,
Yeah,
BC.
it really is. I mean, that's basically
Yep,
what it is. It's like the whole BBY thing before the Battle of Yavin, after the Battle of Yavin.
yep.
It's kind of weird that they chose
That
that.
that
Maybe,
as the
yeah, is like
because that's where
the
Star Wars
marker.
started.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess it's the first movie, so that makes sense. And that's kind of when the
yeah,
rebellion, even though you could make the argument that the Battle of Scarif was when the rebellion was truly born, but I
true.
get it. I just always thought that was a really weird, like, time
Yes,
marker, you know?
yeah. I mean, well, the thing is with the Empire and this, it's basically a branding thing, right? They kind of changed, the logo and some branding stuff, and they've become the Empire now instead of the Republic. So there's a lot of things that they haven't, that a lot of people haven't caught on to, the everyday citizens, like you mentioned, and that's the interesting thing because it takes a while for things to kind of finally catch up, for everyone to kind of get immersed into this new regime, essentially. Now, with the um, with the Empire, you have to kind of look at it from like they're kind of their own criminal organization anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird because it's like you have a criminal organization that's kind of policing all the other criminal organizations, where it used to be the Republic against criminal organizations. See what I'm saying? It's a weird
Well, I
kind
mean, but
of
that actually brings up a good thing. And honestly, there's a show topic in there somewhere because I don't necessarily think that Palpatine and Vader even would see themselves as a criminal organization. I mean,
yeah, they never do.
Palpatine, well, I mean, the reason why I say that is because, Palpatine just kind of craves the ultimate power. He's kind of like the ultimate evil. I don't necessarily think that, I mean, it's almost more of like a purity of power type of thing, more so than going and creating criminal acts. Vader, of course, ever since he was Anakin, wanted the control so that way he could be the one to make everything fair, right? Because, and you alluded to this, where the villains never think they're the villains. They always
Mhm.
think they're the good guys. And I think that that's what differentiates them in a lot of ways because even the general officers and all that in the empire, they really honestly believe they're the good guys. Like they think that
Oh
they're the
yeah,
ones, like, look, when you had the Republic, you had all this rampant crime and all this stuff, and now look at it, we're clamping down on this stuff, and they think they're doing a more effective job. Of course, they're doing it in horrific ways, and you have a little bit of a, ends justifies the means in their eyes, but it's true. I mean, when you just remove yourself from that, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's basically the ultimate criminal empire, uh, you know,
Mhm.
policing the other ones. Ted brings up that it's 18 years before the Battle of Yavin. Now that's significant because that means that it's only about, we're only like a year into the empire at this point because there's
Yeah.
like 19 years between episodes 3 and 4.
Hmm.
So if it's 18 years, then we're wrong. Then that puts this thing before Solo, which makes sense because it seems in this series that Maul is beginning, like he's still in the shadows, hence the title Shadowlord. Um, so he hasn't quite yet seized control of Crimson Dawn, and I think that they actually mention Crimson Dawn and Black Sun by name in the show.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So he hasn't quite he hasn't quite taken control yet. So yeah, this is even well before Solo, and in fact, he says Solo is 10 years before Battle of Yavin. And so yeah, so there's like this is like 8 years before that, and then Ted goes on to say, correct, Revenge of the Sith is 19 years before the Battle of Yavin. See, I remember that. Every
Yeah.
once in a while, correct information actually, Comes in there somewhere.
But yeah, I mean, like I really enjoyed these two episodes. Um, we're getting to see the stress of being a law enforcement that is for Lawson. Because Two Boots over there is kind of like, look, we got to follow protocol. We should call the Empire, and he's just like, no, let's see if we can handle this ourselves. Because once you bring the Empire into this, they're not gonna leave. It's not like oh, we caught Maul. All right, well, see you later. Like, nope, we're here for life now. It's just, and no one wants that because I think some people already know that, like, you know, having that imperial presence there means a whole lot of oppression,
Yeah, you know
and
what?
they're trying.
I'll tell you, man. I mean, it's funny that you say that because you remember the scene? I don't remember if it was episode 3 or 4. I think it was episode 4, where Maul was like, "Hey, listen, you leave me alone, I'll protect you." I kind of would have taken that deal, because I mean, it wasn't quite it wasn't quite as morally ambiguous as like usually when because that's a typical gangster movie trope, right? Where
Yeah.
the main bad guy says, "Listen, if you leave my operation alone, I'll offer protection and I'll clean up the streets actually." And so
Hmm.
the cop obviously is weighing like, all right, well, if I let this guy do whatever, then I actually get for the most part law and order, except for what this guy's doing. And then of course, you know, if you're being the ultimate good, it's like, well, no, I mean, I can't let you do that, right? But in this case, though, I forgot exactly how because it wasn't just that. It was almost like, because Maul wasn't even really trying to get away with a bunch of, so it's more like, look, I just want to get these people that are on my list. And if you leave me alone and let me do that,
Yeah,
then
he basically said, if you out, he's like, we won't cause any trouble here for you
right.
as long as you stay out of my way and let me do what I need to do.
Yeah, and it was
Essentially.
like, and I'll protect you and all this other stuff. So it's kind of like, well, I remember watching this going, I don't know, man. Like, usually you would be like on the cop. No, I can't do that. But I mean, in this case, I was kind of like, I don't know. That kind of sounds fair to me. Because I mean, what Maul
uh,
was really doing wasn't necessary. I mean, I don't know. I
I think that's
guess,
the problem, though. I don't think Lawson really knew what Maul was really trying to do.
yeah. Well, that's true. That is a good point. I mean, he
He
wasn't
doesn't
really
have a.
up on the plan. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we know because we're we had the objective seat, so to speak. Um,
well.
yeah, like even, huh?
Well, before you get to that, Grandmaster joins us. He's got a couple of.
Ah,
He's reiterating basically what Ted said at first, where he says, "Yeah, it's set approximately 18 years before the Battle of Yavin, roughly 1 year after Revenge of the Sith and the end of the Clone Wars." And then he's like, it focuses on the early Imperial era, showing Maul regaining power in the criminal underworld following his escape during Order 66. So, yeah, that just adds a little bit more context to what we were talking about. So, please.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and I think that with Devon, you know, she's kind of this wide-eyed, bushy-tailed Padawan that's full of zeal and wants to but at the same time, Daki, her master, is kind of like, look, we just gotta. We're not the people we used to be. We don't have the protection of the Jedi Order. We don't have the resources. We don't have the numbers. We don't have the trust of the people. Like, we gotta really, be careful here. They just tried to kill us all with Order 66. Speaking of which, and so it's kind of a weird space for them because it's like they want to be with it's kind of like the Inquisitor said in Kenobi. It's like they can't help themselves. They want to be the hero, but they can't because it reveals them, and they and even Maul said it. It's like, look, you know, you guys are supposed to be the leaders, and you guys are crawling around and hiding and you know cowering behind stuff, and it's pathetic. When you're more powerful than everybody out here, you guys should be running the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but that was one thing that I found a little hypocritical in a way. Because it's like, oh yeah, you really feel that way? Go ahead and reveal yourself to Palpatine and Vader. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, they know
Right.
he's out there and they're hunting Maul, definitely. Which is another thing I'm glad that they more or less, I mean, they hinted on that in this too, is the fact that, yeah, the Empire definitely, because if you think about it, somebody like Maul running around is a little bit, it was inconvenient during the Clone Wars, but it's somewhat dangerous now. Like, he's like a loose cannon. Like that, he's the type of guy that Palpatine would be like, listen, we can't let this guy, run around. I mean, I think
Yes.
that in later, if I remember some of the comics correctly, in later times, and this is probably around the time that he becomes um like the leader of Crimson Dawn, then it's probably like, okay, look, you're kind of a criminal underworld guy now. You're not really interfering with us. Now maybe we can work with
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that when he made that whole appeal to Lawson about like, hey, look, if you stayed out of my way, I won't cause any issues. Neither one of us wants the empire here, and it's like that just shows Maul's, you know, fear of like, look, I don't want the empire sniffing around here either, because that brings way too much attention to me, and I can't do what I want to do. And not only that, but it's like now Vader, Palpatine, his old master, they'll be hunting him down.
well, not only that, but I mean, it's the funny thing is, and this is where I'm really happy that they actually have this whole series now, because I have always, I mean, we do see Maul kind of in the middle of this timeline, right? Like around the time Solo, he makes a little bit of an appearance, and again, a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about too is more in the comics, right? And this is around the time of Solo, around the time, the halfway point, 9, 10 years before the Battle of Yavin. And then, of course, we see him again in Rebels, obviously. He features prominently, I think, particularly like in seasons 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. But we see him more as the Empire is established and he basically has a place and everything else. But what's interesting to me about this series, and you see this a lot in episodes 3 and 4, is that, yeah, it basically is showing us Maul's state of mind about when the Republic turns into the Empire, because that had to be kind of a weird thing for him.
Hmm.
Because, before he would always, maybe he would run into Jedi and stuff like that, but it's like, okay, well, now they're all but gone. And it's funny because I remember when I was reading about the series coming out, it talked about how he is pretty much at odds with the Empire and he doesn't love it any more than, even though it was his former master, it's like he's not into it either.
No,
He thinks that they lack honor and all this other stuff, whatever. Now,
and they betrayed him too, and
well,
he's still
yeah,
mad about.
yeah.
He stood. That's why he even said like when he was talking to Devon, he was like we're just alike. He was like the same people that did this stuff to me. Well, you know what? They killed my brother. They killed my mother. He was like, and they tried to kill me. He was like, why wouldn't I be upset? And essentially, it's like he has his whole like his whole motive is revenge. Is trying to and I think he's trying to quietly acquire enough of an army to kind of at least get him in the door, or enough pawns that he can like, okay, so I can get close enough to deal with the people who I really want to deal with, and that's Vader and uh Palpatine.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm trying to remember whether or not Maul knew that Anakin was Vader. Like, if that was ever mentioning, I don't remember. Grandmaster still watching. Probably tell us.
Now in Clone Wars, when he was fighting Ahsoka, I thought he mentioned something about that.
Yeah, but in
Because in
Clone
that
Wars,
battle,
he wasn't Vader yet. Remember, he wasn't Vader till Revenge of the Sith.
remember they overlapped.
Barely. I mean,
Well, yeah,
I don't
but I
know if
mean,
he.
but
I don't know if he actually faced. You're talking about when he
because
was still
remember
like the
he,
non-suit, like before he went to Mustafar to face Obi-Wan.
yeah, because remember
Because
he was fighting
Ahsoka
us. He
was
was
fighting him.
Ahsoka was fighting Maul, and then he was like, something has happened, and he was just like,
Oh, I do vaguely remember like
remember,
him feeling it
and
through the Force or
feeling in the
something like
Force,
that.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
just, and Ahsoka was just like, no, that's not, that couldn't have happened, you know, and he was
Yeah,
just kind of
Maul's
like,
like,
no,
hey, time
I,
out.
I,
There's a little bit of a strange turn of events here. You
yeah,
should actually,
exactly,
you
like
might
breaking
be interested.
news.
Yeah, you might be interested in this. You know
You
your
might
old
want to cut on
master, the hero of the
TMZ.
Jedi, right? Yeah. So earlier, Grandmaster said the timeline placement is set in the early dark times of the Empire, falling between the events of the Bad Batch and Solo. Okay, that also gives us a little extra context too, because it's true. Like Bad Batch was set really early, like
Yeah,
immediately
like
at
pretty much
Order
right after.
66. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I mean, it starts during Order 66, actually. So that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean, it's interesting to me
so in this
because
one, Maul wouldn't have known. Well, no,
no, you would have,
yeah,
because this
he
is
would have
after that.
because after Revenge of the Sith. So yeah,
Well, so my
he
point
knows.
being, if he knows, then he knows that, oh crap, I mean, and it's kind of funny because after the Phantom Menace, you don't really, you're kind of like, okay, it's now we lose Maul, we get Dooku. But once they made the decision to bring Maul back, it's fascinating to me because you basically have this former Sith Lord running around loose. You
Hmm.
know, sure, Tyrannus is now the Sith apprentice to Palpatine, but you still have Maul though. Like he never really, you know,
You never really
right?
finished
And then
that.
of course,
Yeah,
Anakin finishes off Dooku, and then he ends up becoming Vader. But you still have Maul though. I mean, it's really interesting and fascinating to me from a story perspective if you actually look at this, because you got to think about what's going through Palpatine's mind is like, yeah, I got to do something about this event. I mean, it's kind
well,
of funny because he doesn't seem overly concerned most of the time.
well, that's the thing, and it's funny because like Maul is constantly trying to figure out like what Palpatine's plan is.
Hmm.
He's always been like, "What are you planning?" My old master. Why would you? He's trying to put himself in the mindset of Palpatine,
Right, right.
and he's always kind of like, as he comes up against various Jedi, namely like Ahsoka, or
Hmm.
it's like okay,
Especially, yeah, especially Ahsoka.
it's like yeah, it's like okay, what's happening? Like it's it was this your plan all along? Because that's the thing. Maul never knew Palpatine's full plan. That's the thing. Palpatine kept everything close to the vest. No one really knew what he was really planning until it was time to execute.
Yeah, it was kind of like Dooku, I think, knew more than Maul did about it. Because I think that
Yeah,
really Palpatine, Maul, yeah, I don't think he really respected as much. Like, because when he got Dooku was like a former Jedi. He trained under Yoda.
he's older,
He's older. I think that Palpatine would
disillusioned.
see him. Yeah, he'd see him more as like okay, you're kind of more of a peer than you know.
But then even still though, it's like
No, I'm not saying that he knew in totality. He obviously didn't.
yeah,
When we
obviously
look
he
at
did. That's what I'm saying. Because that's otherwise he would have known about him grooming Anakin the whole time. That's what I'm saying.
right,
It's like he kept everything kind of like to the vest, and for the people he wanted to know certain information, he gave them enough of that. It's like, oh, okay, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. But I'm not giving you the full scope of it because
Well, and you
you
know
know
when he was like about to be killed, and like Palpatine was like, "Kill him now" or
do
whatever.
it.
It's
Yep,
like, "Oh,
kill him. Yeah,
now I
son
get
of a.
it." But I mean, I think that it's important though to note that being that even though Maul, because again, I can understand to a certain degree why he probably wasn't overly concerned, because it's like, I mean, compared to like Palpatine and Vader, I mean, Maul, he he
Even
possessed.
Dooku, like power wise,
Oh yeah,
like
Dooku was way more powerful than Maul. I love it every time I've gotten into those conversations before where people have tried to say otherwise. I'm like, dude, no, come on.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I think Palpatine he severely underestimated Maul's
Yes,
cunningness and the fact that he didn't realize Maul was as cunning as he is, and then he's like, okay, well, I've told him enough of what I'm got going on, probably, and he's somewhat kind of wily enough to kind of figure out what's as things are happening. Don't get me wrong, Maul is no slouch, but he's not Dooku, definitely not Vader, you
right,
know.
exactly.
But
It's sort of like
you
Maul when
still
you compare him
you
to.
still can be a big thorn in my side though.
And yeah, and Maul, I mean, and that's a good point too. I mean, look, Maul is super powerful. I mean, don't, we're not saying that he's not. It's just when you compare him to those guys
Right.
in particular, it's like, well, falls apart a little bit. But I think it's also worth noting too that Maul, much like Palpatine, like what you're saying, is playing the long game. And I think that, you in doing that, it's going to be interesting because, and I'm sure, look, I haven't seen five and five and six have been out for like 4 days or whatever. I haven't watched them yet. First of all, I didn't
Hmm.
want to watch them because I knew we
Right.
were doing 3 and 4. And I didn't want to start getting them all mixed up,
Yep.
right?
Exactly.
Like I'm trying to keep this pure. And honestly, I generally, because we usually do the show on Sundays, I generally try to watch the show Saturday night so it's fresh in my mind, or maybe even Sunday
Hmm.
afternoon. And so that's probably when I'm going to watch 5 and 6. But what I'm curious about now that you have that ending where Two Boots obviously jumped the gun and invited the Empire, and you see that really cool last scene,
Man, yeah.
with the Empire coming. Now I'm beginning to wonder if we're going to start to see the Inquisitors come in.
Hmm.
I don't
I
know
think
if
so.
that's. I think we're going to. I don't know if it's going to happen. Well, it could, because again, they are releasing 2 episodes at a time, so it could be a case where you do see them, and I don't know. You guys, look, if you guys in the chats want to even say yes, there's Inquisitors, no, there isn't in these, it's fine. We don't really care about spoilers. You know, it's totally cool. But I do like the dynamic. There's a couple of other little things in these episodes that I thought were cool, and of course, there's a whole Devon Maul thing. We can get to that, but I like Lawson and his kid. When he went to the game,
Yeah.
and then when his
Man.
kid turns around, and he's gone because obviously he got called away. They're really hammering home this family dynamic of the father wants to be there, but he can't because he's responsible for the law and order of this area, and this mall thing is happening, and it's a little bit of an
Hmm.
extenuating circumstance, and that's chipping away at the kid's trust and everything else, constantly being disappointed by his dad. So I do love that whole element to this
Yeah.
because it does add a little bit more of a character driven type of storyline versus just a bunch of lightsabers and blasters and all that stuff. And then the
Yeah.
other thing, obviously the Lawson Two Boots thing, because Two Boots is really trying to do the right thing, not realizing that he just basically screwed them all.
Man, massively. Even man, I love the scene where Vadio, is it Vadio or Video?
Audio, yeah, I think that's
Vadio. He
Mario. Let's see. I actually
or
have.
Vario. Uh, he brings the credits and he, thinks that he's
Yes.
bringing Maul. And he's just like, he's all trying to warm the Pikes, and they stun the wrong guy. He
Yeah.
looks like Maul, but it's not Maul. And man,
I
when the
know
real Maul shows
he's
up,
taking a
man,
little
it's just
page out
like,
of Padme's book, man. He's got his own little
right.
Dorme running around.
He probably learns like, yeah, I got to remember to do that one day.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, it's not a bad idea.
But man, like when the real Maul shows up, oh man,
Oh man. Well, see, now that goes
ugh,
into Maul's power, right? Like,
yeah,
because that dude, the Maul
that's
decoy,
cunning. Yeah,
exactly. But the Maul, like the Maul stand-in dude was, I mean, he was
he
no
was pretty
slouch.
formidable. No, he was actually kicking butt, man.
He
Until he
was
got
kicking butt, and you could kind of go, all right, that could be Maul. But then when Maul gets there, you're like, oh yeah, okay,
no,
this guy's
that's
like on
Maul.
another level, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and that was a good scene too. But yes, Vario, the whole Vario storyline was
Does
fantastic
he?
as well. Because again,
Doesn't he look like a older version of Stitch?
yeah, yeah,
I kept thinking of like Lilo and Stitch. Like, man, he looks like Stitch.
he's also like a. I could see him in like Monsters Inc.
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
totally see
exactly.
that. I mean, it just he's he's kind of a cute little character in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. But I mean, it's really fun to watch that part of it because that's really a well-written, good sense of adventure, I think.
Hmm.
When you're dealing with that whole storyline. And that's something that I like to see too, like the whole dealings between the crime lords and all that and that's why I think there's a really good balance in this show. That's another thing that I think cannot be understated is it has a really good balance between the different types of stories that you see in Star Wars, right? You have a little bit of a political thing going. You have something that's introduced which is more of a law and order kind of a thing, which we
Hmm.
haven't seen too much of. You have obviously the criminal underworld element. You have a little bit of the Jedi force using element and then of course you have a family dynamic. You have a little bit of all these different types of stories and types of plots weaved expertly, I think, in one show and it all flows together nice. There's nothing that's jarring about it. There's nothing that's one of the
Off-putting.
problems that I
Yeah.
had well, what I had with the Clone Wars was and we talk about the whole like droids getting lost for 4 episodes. You don't really, even when they're dealing with other things, it's like you're actually interested in all of the storylines.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think nothing is off-putting. It's kind of
Mhm.
it's cohesive. I think that's the best thing
Yeah,
is that everything is cohesive. Even the relationship with Docky and Devon. I definitely hear it, but it's like Dennis Haysbert. It's like wow.
I know. And every single time, I just think President in 24.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I
Or
can't, or
uh,
the Allstate
say
commercials.
he's gonna ask her is she in good hands.
Yeah,
you know,
if he utters the lines, "Well, you're in good hands," or something,
I'm
I'm
like
gonna
I'm gonna
lose it
lose
right
it.
then and there.
Yeah. but but yeah, just being that, it's like, oh yeah, Uncle Docky, just you know, he's just he kind of has that um Yoda-esque kind of vibe to him. Obviously not as powerful, but um just his sense of calm, his sense of wisdom, and that's, what you and I think Dennis Haysbert brings that out just
Mhm.
with his voice and his mannerisms. you can just tell that he's even when he was he almost bought it with Maul, and Devon had to save him. It was just like, man, such a great character. And I think they have a lot of depth to them, and there's probably a lot of story behind Docky and Devon. Hopefully we get
And
to
it's
explore in
something
the
I
other
like to see.
episodes.
And usually
Hmm.
that's not the case. Usually when you get these other Jedi characters. Now, I do feel that way when I'm reading the novels, where I'm pretty much into a lot of these guys because they're generally well written. And I think that that's the key here is the fact that these two characters are very well written. They're not just Jedi foils for Maul.
Hmm.
They're not just there to get us to more of the Force type stuff with Maul. I actually care about them, and I'm interested in their characters. It's very much kind of like, and really, their dynamic in a lot of ways mirrors Kanan and Ezra. Because if you
Mm.
remember in the early
Yeah.
days of Ezra's journey, he just wanted to go off and do all this stuff, and Kanan's like, "Yeah, man, we can't go out there and do this."
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they're doing this. They alluded with this a little bit in the Obi-Wan series, although with Obi-Wan, he just distanced himself from the Force, so he wasn't even that powerful. And at first, anyway. And that actually was a smart move in the writing because somebody like Obi-Wan would have a very hard time restraining himself from helping somebody in need, with all this power, especially the power that Obi-Wan had. Well, what's
Hmm.
the best way to handle it? Just give up the power. So now if you're not
Yeah.
powerful enough, well, that whole temptation to jump in there, I mean,
Yeah.
other than maybe in your head, you're going, ooh, you tried that like 10 years ago, that kind of a thing,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, I would imagine like somebody who was like a supreme fighter when they were like in their 20s or 30s and now they're in their 60s and it's just like they're not,
Yeah.
but
You've lost
imagine,
those steps.
right.
Yeah.
But now imagine if you were able to get all that back, well, then you would be tempted to, utilize that. And that's where I think part of the really difficult thing about these Jedi that did maintain their power, like your Ahsokas and things like that, the restraint that it takes to see somebody in peril, knowing that you can save them, you can stop it, you can, or seeing some injustice done, and knowing that you could do something about it, but not because you know that it would basically put you in trouble. That would be the ultimate torture and was the
Yeah.
ultimate torture for a lot of these Jedi. Now, of course,
Absolutely.
as time has gone on and all these projects are being made, the problem, and they're going to have to address this event because it's like, okay, look, there are so many of these Jedi running around at this point, that it's like, guys, I mean, they could almost put the Jedi Order back together and actually do something. Because every project we always meet, and yes, I know what the argument against this is going to be. They're going to be like, yes, but they're separated and they don't know and they can't risk contacting each other. And yeah, I get it. There is an in-universe explanation. But it's just getting more comical to me because every new project brings like a gang of new Jedi characters. Whereas if you're Luke Skywalker, you're going, where were you guys? Like, I really could have used your help because we're given the impression that he's like the last one, the
Yeah.
last guy. Like, you're it because Vader's there, but he's a Sith Lord, so he doesn't count. So
Hmm.
Luke, you're learning this. Obi-Wan's like, look, you're the last one.
You and Leia. That's it.
Yeah. And you're finding out because Star Wars made a lot of money, so they write a lot more shows, and you need Jedi in them to make money. It's like, no, not only are you not the last one, you're not even close to the last one. There's like, thousands of them running around. So it's getting to be more comical if you think about it as
Yeah,
time goes
true.
on. Because it's like pretty soon you're just like, I mean,
So why
you
don't we
could have,
all just go
yeah, they
storm
could have just stormed. I mean, with all these Jedi, and they're not, weak
slouches?
either. Right. It's like, with Luke, if they had all just like gone in, they could have just cleaned house.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty funny. And I mean, because that's the other thing too, that Luke, even though it's ironic, because him facing the Emperor Invader is part of what brought him to his power. But I'm sure, like the way he was at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, you know, I wonder, you got to wonder if like part of him's like, oh man, I wish I could go back to Palpatine's throne room now.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, man. What do you think you're gonna see in the next 2 episodes?
well, hold on. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I'll just put him on real quick. Like, just zip through them. Well, let's see. Well, what I'm hoping that we see is now that the Empire's there, I'd like to see some Inquisitors come out. I'd like to see how the Empire is going to factor into it. And obviously, Maul's now going to have less of a free run. And the thing is that it's going to be also fascinating to see if Maul knows that Lawson wasn't the one that brought them in. He
I would love to
probably
see.
he probably
Oh, go
knows
ahead.
that. He probably knows that because he knows Lawson doesn't want the Empire in.
No, I agree. I'm looking forward to seeing what Imperial officer they put over this whole thing.
Mm. You think it's going to
Like,
be
I think
somebody classic, or you think it's just going to be some new dude?
it's probably going to be some new dude or chick, but they almost kind of how we felt about Callus or Price. I think that's who it was.
Yep.
Um, with Thrawn. Like, it's just always interesting to see what Imperial officers they have and their personality and how they deal with it. And of course, reporting back their failures and things like that. And like, I always love those interactions because of them having to have the pressure of like, man, look, I just got one guy I got to bring in. Yeah, he's causing me all this grief, and I can't seem to nail this guy's feet to the floor. And these bigwigs like Vader and Inquisitors and Palpatine are going to have my neck if I really don't get this done. So,
Well, the Inquisitors would be dispatched under those officers, and that's why I'm really curious to see whether or not we're going to see them in these next couple episodes, because it's always somebody like Maul, right? It's kind of like, you're the guy. Hey, here's the good news. You only have to go and get one guy. And if you get this guy, you're going to be pretty significantly rewarded because
mhm.
Palpatine and Vader really want this guy. Oh, the bad news, though, is he was a former Sith Lord that basically has the same kind of powers that Vader and Palpatine have. So, not going to
Yeah,
be the easiest thing, right?
the bad thing is that he's Maul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one guy, though. So, I mean, obviously, Palpatine would know, like, okay, I can't just, you know, send like some admiral out with a bunch of stormtroopers to get him. And well, I'll tell you what else I would like to see that would be kind of fun is the Death Troopers.
Mm.
Because being that they were around for Rogue One, right? I mean, it depends on when they were created because they could have been a later creation, right? Like they could have been somebody. Because again, this is the only problem that you have when you're playing in this kind of a 50-year franchise sandbox is that, okay, we're in the 2000s. This thing was made in like 1977. So we're going to make something that takes place before that film was made. okay, you're going to come up with all this really cool crap, and you got to explain, well, why, where were the Death Troopers in episodes 4, 5, and 6? They would have come in real handy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be really careful about doing things like that, because even something, like creating the Ahsoka character, okay, she lives. Well, where was she during the original trilogy then? Now, of course, they did take care of that somewhat in universe, but you do have to be very careful when you do things like
Very true. Very, very true.
But that's what I'm hoping
Um,
we see, though. I would like to see something like that. I would like to see, obviously, if you're going the Stormtrooper route, you would have to have somebody like the Death Troopers, to really deal with that sort of situation. Or you would need the Inquisitors, because if you're trying to capture a Force user, you got to have an Inquisitor to do that. You're not going to just send out, your
yeah,
random battalion of stormtroopers. I mean, sure, you can overwhelm them with numbers, I guess, but it's not going to be the same thing.
yeah,
So that's why I am looking forward to seeing it.
yeah. I think that's a very valid point. I mean, I think it makes the most sense of why you would bring Inquisitors in. I mean, that's what they were there for anyway.
Right.
And it's what's interesting is that Inquisitors were taught mainly to go against Jedi because they know how Jedi think. It's another thing though, like they're going against their own.
Well, that's another thing, being that we're very
That's
early. We're only a year after Revenge of the Sith.
hmm
Asking what I'd like to see out of this series, I would like to see a little bit of how they dealt with creating the Inquisitors. How do you take these Jedi who are Jedi and just be like, oh, yeah, we need you to hunt your own people now. Now, they did deal with that slightly with the old Barasafi thing in the Tales of the Empire
hmm
story, like season 2 or whatever that was. They did do that. But I'd like to see a little bit more of that, because I think that by the time, say, the Obi-Wan series came out, which basically was sort of like right in the middle of the two, right? It's pretty evenly between 3 and 4. It's kind of like, I think Obi-Wan took place like, it was like a little after Solo, actually. Um, but okay, you had the Inquisitors featured pretty prominently in that series. Well, that makes sense because, you're a good 10 years basically into this, right? So you can accept the fact that, okay, I don't have a problem seeing these people run around, because there's been enough time between when the Empire was created and now that you can conceivably have this anti-force fighting force. But a year afterwards, you're gonna have to do a little bit of an origin story, I think. I mean, granted, there's enough time where you could still make the kids. It's not like it's 3 days after, but still, you know what I mean? It's like, I just
yeah.
think that it would be
Valid
good
point.
if they touched on it.
Valid point. All valid points.
But yeah, I mean, I thought again, these 2 episodes were, I mean, it built on what we had in episodes 1 and 2, and it's just as good. And I feel pretty good in feeling like, okay, this is going to be a really, really good series. I don't think it's going to lose its way halfway through. What are we dealing with here? 8, 10 episodes? I ask this like every week. Every week I ask how long the series is going to be. I think it's 10, but I could be wrong. And I think it's because I'm trained with the live action shows, they're always like 8. In case of Obi-Wan, it was 6. Are you looking it up?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Use the little devices that we have at our disposal. See, there's no excuse to not know anything.
It's 10.
It is 10?
Right, because it ends on May the 4th.
Right, which is why I can't be. Well, that makes sense. That would be 5 weeks, 2 episodes a week, 10 episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense because May the 4th is like a couple weeks. So we had 5 and 6 drop, then 7 and 8 will drop next Monday, be like the 27th, and then 9 and 10 would be the following. This time I'm really hoping that we can go on this Sunday. So that way we can basically do these things. I mean,
planned.
it's bad enough when we're basically doing them like the day before the new episodes were released, because we're always behind, right?
Right.
Although it does give everybody a chance to watch it. That's the good thing. And it also, people can weigh in their opinion or whatever. But it was really bad, like in the case of this week, when we're doing it, 4 days into the new episodes are actually airing. So hopefully we can do it this Sunday, and we'll get all the answers to our questions. So I guess it's really time for our rating for these two.
7.5.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I'm going to go to. Maybe 7.5 for 3 and 8.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because I like 3 a lot. I thought there was a really good dynamic going between Devon and Maul. I like the Dario part of it too. I thought that was really great. But where I really felt 4 was a little bit, just a little bit stronger is you're factoring in the Maul Lawson thing, the Devon Maul thing, the Dario aspect. Two Boots is really just amped up to get the Empire involved, and he's thinking that Lawson is not following procedure. Like, you just have all these conflicting emotions and intentions and everything else going on at once. And I thought that they navigated each one of these subplots just brilliantly to the point where it was a nice segue. Like, nothing felt jarring in episode. So I would give episode 4 a 0.5 point edge over episode 3 for that reason.
Okay.
All right. So as everybody knows, because this is the nice part about when we're reviewing a series, is there's no mystery on what we're going to be talking about next time.
No, none whatsoever.
None whatsoever. We're going to be talking about episodes 5 and 6. So hopefully you guys join us then. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. As everybody knows, algorithm loves likes. And we love subscribers. And then, of course, hit that notification bell because, look, we're supposed to go on Sundays. It's Thursday. We were supposed to go on at 8. We went on at 8:30. So you're going to definitely want to hit that notification bell so you know exactly when we're live and you can join us. But we do strive to do it every Sunday at 8 o'clock. And, go to our Discord, continue the discussion there. Of course, we got some stuff on our Facebook and Instagram that you can look at and interact with us there as well. Although we really try to steer everybody toward the Discord, so check the link for that. There's a lot of good discussions that pops up. Grandmaster, of course, gives us a ton of information about all kinds of projects in there. He's kind of like our Lucasfilm insider. At least we think he is. He either is or he knows something. But I will say this, his information is all checked out, and he gave it to us long before it was anywhere. So take that for what you will. And then, of course, watch for all of our upcoming shows. Not sure what we're going to do after the Darth Maul series is over. Probably go back to talking about our normal Star Wars discussions. But if you have a topic, you can also suggest it in our Discord. That if you guys want us to talk about something, let us know. We'll talk about it. So with that, I think we're going to hold it off till next week. So I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.